You're listening to Cosmic Cousins Soul-Centered Astrology. I am your host, Jeff Hinshaw. Thanks for tuning in. Cosmic Cousins is dedicated to honoring the interconnectedness of our universal family through embodied health, self-discovery, and deeper learning. And it is here to bring you back into alignment with the cosmos. So thank you for being here as always. Hey, Cosmic Cousins. Welcome back to another week of the podcast. This is our Capricorn Full Moon podcast episode right here at the beginning of Cancer season. We're about a third of the way into Cancer season of 2023. But either way, whenever you choose to tune into this podcast episode, this is our one Capricorn full moon of the year. This is our moment to reflect on Capricorn themes. And there have been some pretty potent themes unfolding in Capricorn over the last decade and a half because we've had Pluto in Capricorn. This is the last full moon in Capricorn with Pluto still in Capricorn. So we're going to get into that today. We're going to check in with Capricorn's ruling planet Saturn, which has been in Pisces since March of this year, 2023. And we also have a really important, potent, powerful conversation today. We have a special guest, Shannon Watts, with us. Shannon Watts is the founder of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. Shannon is a Capricorn sun with a Pisces moon and a Cancer rising. So this conversation, we cover a lot of different topics. I'm going to share with you those topics now so you know what we're going to be getting into in this episode. So some of the topics covered during our time together, we talk about obstacles, challenges, and perseverance as a Capricorn, founder syndrome, separating one's identity from an organization, the relational awareness of zodiac signs. As an example, Cancer is a personal water sign. Capricorn is a collective water sign. We talk about cardinal signs as activist. That's right. Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn have an activist quality to them as cardinal signs. We talk about acting in the world with integrity, midlife crisis points, Uranus and Saturn oppositions. Asteroid Pallas is conjunct Shannon's Pisces moon and midheaven. So we talk about Pallas and this asteroid's relationship to restorative justice and truth. We explore navigating complex family dynamics, setting boundaries with mom and family, healing intergenerational trauma, the intersection of astrology, spirituality, and social justice, what it means to be a, quote, joyful warrior, empowering women to take leadership roles, and much more. So you're going to want to stick around for this conversation. It's really powerful. We also talk about Shannon's birth chart and certain major transits that Shannon has moved through. And as an example, when Shannon founded Moms Demand Action, Pluto in Capricorn was conjunct her natal Capricorn sun. So I look forward to sharing that conversation with you. But for now, I wanted to check in with you about this Capricorn full moon. If you're new here, welcome to the podcast. It's an honor to be here with you. If you're a regular listener, thank you as always for tuning into the show. Without you, this show would not be possible. So, you know, if you've been listening, I'll always offer you 3 phrases. And these phrases are here to guide you in your exploration of whatever lunation we're meditating on. And so the phrases I have for our Capricorn full moon are I build, which is pretty typical for Capricorn. This is one of the phrases we associate with Capricorn. I plan, I overcome. I build, I plan, I overcome. So you might pull a tarot card for each of these 3 phrases. If you do, I would love to see them. You can always email me or you can post it on Instagram and tag me and I'll reshare it. They also act as a template for conversation. Perhaps they might inspire some deeper conversation with a loved one. I build, I plan, I overcome. They could also be journal prompts for you, or you could use them as a little mantra to keep the mind focused as you continue to navigate these Capricorn themes. I want to remind you that when you listen to these podcast episodes, you do not have to listen to it right when it's published. You know, this is the Capricorn Full Moon weekend. I'm recording this Sunday, July 2nd of 2023. And the full moon is Monday, July 3rd of 2023. But you could listen to this at any time throughout Cancer season, or any time really throughout the year 2023, because the themes will still relate. And I think this is particular to Capricorn, because when we're meditating on Capricorn, Aquarius, or Pisces, the final 3 signs of the wheel, their ruling planets are collective ruling planets, meaning Capricorn's ruled by Saturn, and Saturn stays in a sign for 3 years. So the themes that I'm going to be discussing will relate to this entire year 2023, also to 2024 and 2025. Like, Capricorn is a big picture thinker. Same with Aquarius. Aquarius's ruling planets are Saturn and Uranus, and Pisces' ruling planet is Neptune. So we're talking more collective energies. So whenever you listen to this podcast episode, it will offer you insight into the Capricorn themes that we're moving through. And so if you are a Capricorn sun, moon, or rising, you might find particular resonance with what we communicate about today. Or for those of you that have other planets in Capricorn, this is an opportunity for you to isolate and tune in and meditate on this part of your chart. So again, I build, I plan, I overcome. Perhaps you pull a card for each of these phrases. So as we begin to tune into Capricorn, you know I always like to bring it back to the body and the breath. It's always important for us to do some sort of somatic healing to ground all of this spiritual cosmic information into the here and now and into the body. So let's go ahead and bring awareness to our body and our breath as we transition into a little meditation for embodied health. Deep inhale, deep exhale, allowing yourself to arrive to this place, to this space that we're carving out to meditate on this Capricorn full moon. Each astrological sign is connected to a different part of the body. And as we get to these final signs of the zodiac wheel, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, we start to feel into their collective potential. Capricorn is connected to the skeletal system. So we're talking about the entire body here, the skeleton, the bones in the body. So take a moment to tune into and breathe into the bones in the body, offering some gratitude for what they provide for you. Capricorn is connected to the knees and to the joints. So perhaps you place your hands on your knees and offer a little bit of love by creating circles over the knees with the hands. The joints, the teeth, the bones, the structural integrity of our physical form. This is Capricorn. And Capricorn is concerned with building solid foundations in our lives. Capricorn is connected to buildings, to architecture. And so when I talk about Capricorn, yes, I mean Capricorn individuals, sure, but also the Capricorn parts of our chart, and also just Capricorn energy in general. When we're talking about astrology, it's a vocabulary for understanding energy. And so when I say Capricorn, I don't just mean Capricorn individuals. I mean Capricorn energy, as in interaction with Capricorn might be like when you go to DMV, for instance. When you go to DMV, which this is interesting, the Department of Motor Vehicles is actually a Capricorn, was founded on January 1st. I can't remember what year off the top of my head, but that kind of made me laugh when I found out DMV is a Capricorn. And the United States is a Cancer if we're using July 4th 1777 as an example. So here we are in this polarity of government, Capricorn, and home, Cancer. So when we're talking about Capricorn, we're talking about an energy. And if you have placements in Capricorn in your chart, you might have some sort of karmic agreement with Capricorn. So Capricorn governs the foundation and structures of our lives, and that includes our physical body. So I'm reminding us for somatic healing, for Capricorn health, it's regular exercise, proper nutrition, maintaining good posture, connecting to the bones, flossing the teeth, brushing the teeth. These are all ways to support the health and strength of our Capricorn-ruled body parts. So as we connect to the structures and the bones of the body, I'll share with you some Capricorn affirmations, and then we'll connect in with this particular full moon. The Capricorn affirmations I have for us are: I listen to the ancient wisdom of my offering. I listen to the ancient wisdom of my offering. Breathe that in and notice what it might conjure up within you. I am deserving of success in all areas of my life. Release anything on the exhale that might be blocking you from fully embodying this truth. I am deserving of success in all areas of my life. I release any limiting beliefs and step into my true power. I release any limiting beliefs and step into my true power. So, as a balance to Cancer season, we're gifted with this beautiful Capricorn full moon. It offers us a practical vantage point for wide contemplation. I think of being on the top of a mountain for Capricorn. The esoteric phrase for Capricorn is, lost am I in light supernal, yet on that light I turn my back. It's an interesting phrase that often will bring me up to the top of a mountain, looking out over the vast landscape and realizing that even though you have seen the light, lost am I in light supernal, you have a duty here on this planet at this time to be of service to the betterment of all people, of all living beings. Capricorn holds a tremendous amount of duty. So this full moon is a time to reconnect with your purpose, your higher purpose, Capricorn, to reconnect with your environment, also Capricorn. So we're honoring the parts of you that are hardworking and resilient, that chose to come to this planet for a purpose. Something bigger than you. This is Capricorn. It's collective Earth. And as a collective Earth sign, we're connected to the health and well-being of all living beings. But at the same time, I want to remind us that Capricorn is also Saturn ruled. So Capricorn may also inspire solitude and a sober outlook, while at the same time is innately connected to the collective. So during this Capricorn full moon, you may become more aware of systems, the systems that we live in, the powers that be, the obstacles needing to be overcome. So strategic planning and perseverance are your allies. How might you utilize your skills and resources to build a future that is dependable for yourself, for your loved ones, and for future generations? This Capricorn full moon wants to know, and it is inspiring us to put ourselves in the public as a leader. So keep putting in the hard work towards your vision and towards your passion. If you build it, they will come, is the mentality for Capricorn. So keep showing up consistently to your practices and your offerings. Those in need of your service and expertise will arrive. You must trust in this. Be patient with the process. Keep at it. Capricorn wants to remind you that you are growing stronger and more powerful with each day. And so we can feel how this Capricorn energy balances out Cancer season. Cancer is about home and family and rest. Capricorn is also reminding us that we came to this planet for a reason. So I have a friend that put themselves out boldly in the public today with their spiritual gifts. I'm really proud of them for doing that. And maybe you find yourself being inspired to step up in new ways. Again, this is the Capricorn Full Moon, Monday, July 3rd, 2023, early in the morning, 4:38 a.m. And it's found at 11 degrees of Capricorn, so you might look to 11 degrees in your birth chart to offer deeper insight into how this might be interacting with your own chart. Some questions for reflection. How might I shift my awareness from the need for recognition and more towards living in alignment with my values? So this could be the shadow of Capricorn, as a need for recognition from parents, from society. We're letting that go and stepping into our soul's calling. So how might I shift my awareness away from the need for recognition and more towards living in alignment with my values? Our next question, what structures need to be put in place in order to ensure greater overall health for body, mind, and spirit? So what structures need to be put in place in your life in order to ensure greater overall health for your body, mind, and spirit? And then finally, in what ways might I commit to using my public offerings to offer greater healing to the earth and its inhabitants? These are some big questions to sit with, and I encourage you, if it calls to you, to do so this Capricorn full moon. Let's go a little bit deeper into this full moon. We're going to talk about Capricorn's ruling planet, Saturn. We're also going to talk about Pluto in Capricorn. So Saturn has been in Pisces since March of this year. Saturn entered Pisces March 7th, 2023. And this could be a time where you might have started to feel as though you were on some precipice of an ending. Pisces is the final sign. It's emotional. And this is the first Capricorn full moon with Capricorn's ruling planet, Saturn, in the sign of Pisces. So what we can do is use this full moon as a time to reflect on and feel into this greater collective shift. Saturn stays in a sign for about 3 years. So before, Pisces is Aquarius. So we had Saturn in Aquarius from March of 2020 through March of 2023. What happened in March of 2020? This is right when the global pandemic really started surfacing and creating ripples of social distancing around the world. Social is Aquarius, distancing is Saturn. So we are leaving that time period behind as Saturn enters Pisces. We've now shifted our focus more towards Saturn and Pisces themes. This is emotional healing, spiritual maturity, letting go, surrender, sobriety, and deep acceptance. So for those with strong Capricorn or Aquarius placements, you've likely felt this shift because Saturn is your ruling planet. So there's been a shift of Saturn and Pisces to the more spiritual, the more emotional, the more contemplative. Those individuals who have Pisces in your chart, Pisces sun, moon, rising, or really any planets that you have in Pisces, this is a major time of maturation and stepping into your soul gifts around the Pisces part of your chart. If you have Saturn in Pisces in your birth chart, welcome to your Saturn return. This happens about once every 30 years, and it indicates a time of maturing. So whatever placements you have in Pisces right now, they're going through an initiation of soul growth over the next 3 years. Spiritual responsibility. Spiritual responsibility, Saturn and Pisces. So again, this is the first Capricorn full moon answering to Saturn and Pisces, and we'll continue to explore these themes together over the next 2.5 years that we have left with this transit. Again, it is March 7th, 2023 through February 14th of 2026, which February 14th is my birthday, so it's interesting that it falls on that date. So yeah, we get almost exactly 3 years of this transit, Saturn and Pisces. And this Capricorn full moon may offer you some insight into how this may be unfolding in your life. We also have Pluto and Capricorn to check in with, which this may be one of the last times that I really talk about Pluto and Capricorn, because we're coming to the end of this transit. To meditate on this transit, you can use Judgment in the tarot, which is Pluto's card, and the Devil in the tarot, which is one of Capricorn's cards. And I have an image of these two cards from the fifth spirit in the newsletter for this podcast episode. If you ever want to look along to the visual of the podcast episodes, I release them as newsletters. I only send out a newsletter on the new and the full moon, so it's a reminder for you of when the episodes come out. But Pluto and Capricorn, what is this all about? Pluto entered Capricorn November 27th, 2008. November 27th, 2008. What was going on then? This was right after Barack Obama was elected as president. This was also the collapse of the financial markets, and the global Great Recession ensued at this time, the stock market crash of 2008. So this particular full moon holds great significance as it marks the last full moon in Capricorn, with Pluto still in the sign of Capricorn. So over the past decade and a half, Pluto has been transiting through this earthy sign, bringing all of its Pluto themes. Pluto is connected to intense transformation, ancestral healing, psychological awareness, and deep soul evolution. We know Capricorn represents structures, systems, and authority, so Pluto's presence here has called for a collective dismantling of outdated structures and power dynamics. So we've witnessed the breakdown of societal norms, the crumbling of institutions, and the exposure of corruption. We've also, in our personal life, stepped into our power around our offerings and our soul purpose, our soul gifts. This is Capricorn. So this last full moon with Pluto and Capricorn, it invites us to reflect on the transformations that we have experienced since 2008. It also invites us to celebrate the growth that has emerged from this process and what we have overcome to step into the roles that we have today. Again, Pluto in Capricorn is November 27th, 2008 through January 21st of 2024. We'll talk a little bit more about Pluto in Capricorn in our conversation with Shannon Watts today, which I'm excited to get into with you. The title of this episode is Hope and Perseverance, conversation with Moms Demand Action founder Shannon Watts. And so before we transition into that conversation, I would like to just make a few announcements. I offer one-on-one astrology readings. You can find out more at my website, cosmiccousins.com. I do have some openings for both July and August. I also have an opening for a one-on-one mentorship with me this autumn. We'd start either in August or September of this year. So if you'd like to work with me for 3 to 6 months one-on-one, please check out my website. I'd be honored to hold space for you in that way. In addition, I'm going to be holding space for a group tarot reading, a tarot soul journey reading on the Aquarius full moon in a month. I haven't released out enrollment for that, but I will in the coming days or week. So if you'd like to be part of a collective tarot reading, each of you will go on your own journey and I'll guide it. Then I'd love to hang out with you on the Aquarius full moon. That's our next full moon, which is going to be on Monday, August 1st, on the actual full moon. We'll gather together. Or I misspoke. It'll be Tuesday evening. We shall gather, August 1st. If you'd like to support the production of this podcast, you could consider becoming a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/cosmiccousins. You could also leave 5 stars, comments, or reviews. And if you do, I will read it on the next podcast episode. So please support the show in any way that you feel aligns with you. And again, thank you as always for being here. At this time, let's transition into this conversation with Capricorn Sun Shannon Watts. I'm going to share a little bit about Shannon, and then we'll transition into our conversation. Shannon Watts, a mother of 5 and founder of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, was recently named Time 100 Most Influential People of 2023 for her work in gun safety advocacy, leading one of the largest mom activism groups on the planet. Over the past decade, this grassroots organization has changed the political calculus, sidelined the NRA, and passed hundreds of gun safety bills at all levels of government. Shannon is living her truth as a powerful leader, Capricorn sun, deeply connected to spirituality, Pisces moon, looking out for the care and protection of families, Cancer rising. On this week's podcast episode, enjoy an hour conversation in which we discuss Shannon's birth chart and dive into major transits. Such a powerful conversation. Let's tune into it now. Okay, I'm really excited for this interview. This one feels really expansive for us cosmic cousins. But today on the podcast, it is my great honor to welcome Shannon Watts, a mother of 5 and founder of Moms Demand Action, a grassroots movement of Americans fighting for public safety measures that can protect people from gun violence. So
hey, Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's nice to see your face again.
You too. It's been how many months since we last saw each other?
I think we were together back in April, beginning of April, for Heidi Rose Robbins' Radiant Life Retreat, which is where we met. And thank you for carving out this space in your life to be here and to gather with us today.
Wait, Jeff, I have to tell you something really funny. I listened to your podcast after we met each other, and I heard you say that you had invited a Capricorn to be on your podcast, and because I'm a Capricorn, you gave me plenty of heads up.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And I was like, that so resonates. I'm a planner.
Yeah, I have found that, especially with Capricorns, you hold such important roles in our community that it's important to plan ahead for a Capricorn and let them know that it's coming, you know? So with Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, I had Bruna on and I literally asked her like 5 minutes before the podcast. Sure, let's do this. And I'm sure there's probably you might have some spontaneity within you too, but you know, it felt important.
I love a 2-month window invite.
Yes. And I have been preparing myself. And what's interesting, I want to check in with you about this too, because Capricorn is a sign that is connected to things like obstacles and challenges that we must overcome in order to persevere and to be the leaders that we're meant to be. And so what's interesting is, for me as an astrologer, I'm so passionate about building bridges with social justice and activism. So to gather with you feels like a really great step in the right direction for myself. And at the same time, you might notice from my backdrop, I'm in a hotel right now. So out of nowhere on Monday, my landlord didn't give me any notice. They started doing construction on my roof. And I was like, I kind of fell into the little me that was like, guess I can't interview Shannon Watts then. Just I'll let that go. You know, where there's obstacles that will arise that are actually testing you to step up to the plate of your power. And so I took matters into my own hand, got a hotel room, and here we are. And obstacles arise around Capricorn. So I wanted to check in with you because you're a Capricorn sun. What does this bring up for you? You know, just that relationship to obstacles and perseverance. And is there maybe an anecdote or a story from your life that is coming to mind right now when we think about these things?
That is so I want to be clear about what you're saying, because I think it's so interesting, Jeff. Are you saying that even sort of when working with or dealing with a Capricorn, you then also, no matter what your sign is, might experience those same obstacles?
Exactly. So another example for me is I actually interviewed a Capricorn a few years ago, and then this has never happened before, but the recording somehow got lost and I wasn't able to publish the episode. So as an astrologer, when engaging with Capricorn energy and even putting a Capricorn podcast out, there's resistance and obstacles that arise.
That is so interesting. Yes. I mean, I go back to even just coming into the world when I almost died during childbirth. And, you know, I had parents who really didn't want to be parents. So it felt in a lot of ways like there were so many obstacles. I struggle with ADHD and OCD and generalized anxiety, right? I barely made it through high school. I barely made it through college. And, then I decided in my early 40s to take on the gun lobby, which I can't sort of imagine a bigger obstacle than that. And so it's interesting that you give me that framework to think about my life, which is constantly facing obstacles and overcoming them. And the one other thing that comes to mind is that I have a recurring dream in my life. And the recurring dream is, I think, thematically about obstacles. And I'll give you an example. I desperately need to get in touch with someone on an old style telephone, but one of the numbers is missing.
Oh my gosh.
And right. So it's just like constantly trying to overcome something in order to make that connection or get something done.
What's coming to mind when you're saying like missing the number too is I'm thinking of the old rotary phones and you just like constantly like cycle. Yes. I'm feeling your Pisces moon come in too. Pisces is connected to dreams. It's connected to spirituality, which is also a part of your life too. So Pisces wants to flow and to be free, and then Capricorn is moving through obstacles. So let's connect in with your big three. You're a Capricorn sun, Pisces moon, and then what's your rising sign?
Cancer.
Yeah, you're Cancer rising. What is your relationship to astrology? I think that could be good for us to just kind of put that out in the open.
I have always loved astrology, found it to be fascinating. Even as a kid, right? Wanting to know more and being curious about that and feeling like I have a personality type and a style, and also feeling the ability to sort of manifest things and to want to use the universe as a guide in some way, if that makes sense. And so I can remember being very young and having experiences with astrologists. And I think it's interesting because if you met me, you wouldn't necessarily think that, right? I'm very Capricorn facing forward. And I think I come across as someone who would sort of poo-poo woo-woo stuff. And I love and embrace it.
Poo-poo the woo-woo.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're making me think of the ruling planet for Capricorn is Saturn, which can have this sort of very stoic quality about it. Maybe even to some, it might feel cool or like you're cool, but also like maybe cool and detached. Emotional.
Intimidating is a word I get a lot.
Intimidating. I mean, to be honest, when the first time that we met at the retreat, we didn't really start talking until like a few days in, but I was like, wow, who is this person? They're so powerful and stoic. Like I was intimidated by you, if I'm being completely honest. And you had such if we think of like from a very mythic perspective, you had such a story arc and like a hero's journey from your time at the retreat. So I do want to connect in and reflect on some of the retreat that we experienced together.
Yeah.
And what's coming to mind right now is that Heidi in her work does embodiments where she will have people act out your sun, moon, rising. So you get to see this unfold and you get to experience everyone's chart live. And what was so interesting about you is that she chose to have your embodiments be acted out through this collective engagement where there were different stations. And so the first station was a group of Capricorns, and she called it your quote unquote Capricorn sisters. And I think you were guided there, and they were like thanking you for your hard work and your perseverance, and maybe even telling you it's okay to take a break or something like that.
Yep.
Because this retreat, if I remember correctly, was a moment where you were stepping down from your leadership role with Moms Demand Action. And so this was a moment of rest, reflection, integration, which you also shared maybe wasn't always like the easiest for you. So we'll start with the Capricorn. We started a Capricorn station. You had your Capricorn sisters. You were stepping down from this role. What does it feel like for you to reflect? Because this is the Capricorn Full Moon. This is when we reflect on Capricorn themes. And something I want to share about this Capricorn Full Moon is it's the last Capricorn Full Moon that Pluto will still be in Capricorn. So we've had Pluto in Capricorn since 2008, and that represents a time of transformation, Pluto. around Capricorn themes, systems, government, patriarchy. So this is the last full moon with Pluto still in Capricorn, and then it shifts into Aquarius, which we can also maybe talk about too. So we get this opportunity to reflect on Capricorn and also the last 12 or so years that, or longer than 12 or so years, 2008. So yeah, we can do the math, but it's been about a decade and a half that we've had this transit. And this full moon actually is a degree from your sun in Capricorn. This full moon is found at 11 degrees of Capricorn, and you are Capricorn sun at 10 degrees. So we're reflecting on Capricorn for you right now. And this break that you took and you stepped down from a leadership role. Could you share a little bit about that? And
yeah. So, when I started Moms Demand Action, it was after kind of a more than a decade long career in corporate communications. And I took a 5-year break because I was blending my family with my husband's family. We have 5 kids together. And I was getting ready to go back to work when the Sandy Hook school shooting tragedy happened. So I really never imagined I'd be an organizer or an activist. I really didn't know that much about the legislative process. I just sort of jumped into this, and for nearly 11 years at the end of this year, I will have been a full-time volunteer. And I remember someone saying to me in the early days, don't get founder syndrome. And I'd never heard of that before. And when I Googled and found out what it was, it is in a way like a Buddhist concept, which is don't become too attached to what you've created. Yeah. So that you then ruin it or damage it. And as a practicing Buddhist, I did not want that to happen. And so I have asked myself every year for the last almost 11 years, is it time for me to step back, believing that founders' rules are finite?
Yeah.
And so when we passed the first federal legislation in 26 years last summer, called the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, for the first time, the answer that came back in my head when I asked myself that was, yes, it is time. It had been sort of no or maybe, and then something would happen that would suck me back in before I could publicly announce I was leaving. But this time, it really felt like it was the right moment. So that was in the summer. And then by November, I told my team what I was planning to do. And then I announced it publicly in January of this year. And so by the time I got to the retreat, this was pretty fresh. And I was doing the work, and I'm still doing the work of separating my identity from the organization and stepping into a void in a sense, right? Like, what is next? And who am I without this? And I think what was interesting about this retreat, and particularly the Capricorn station that you mentioned, was for some reason it wasn't enough for my friends and family to tell me it was okay.
Yeah.
I almost needed this community. And to be clear, I knew no one. I know Heidi, but we're not close friends. I just admire her. And so I really knew no one. And it took this group of strangers to make me feel like I had the permission to step back and that it would be okay.
Yeah. I feel so much of your Pisces moon influence. Even you just talking about your spiritual practices with Buddhism, this feels very Pisces. You talked about stepping into the void space, which is also Pisces. And Pisces is connected to the universal family. It is the collective water sign. So Cancer is personal water. Cancer says, this is my family. This is my home. And then Pisces is the collective water. And so Pisces wants to connect to others that are strangers. I think of a lot of famous Pisces individuals have that quality in their work where they're wanting to connect to humanity in some sort of way, like photographing complete strangers. That's a Pisces thing, actually. And photography is a Pisces theme too. So I'm hearing the Pisces influence come in. And sometimes our moon sign, we're not always fully aware of ourselves. We might identify sun with our sun sign, but the Pisces moon it's there. It's very strong. And
I didn't realize until you just said that Cancer is the individual
yeah.
and Pisces is the collective. That's so interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah. So you can do it with all elements. So Cancer, personal water. Scorpio is a water sign, but it's interpersonal, which is why it's psychology and sexuality. And then Pisces is collective water. Like when you go to a concert, Pisces rules over movies and concerts because you're in the collective ocean swimming together.
Yep.
Like we might know the same song, even though we've never spent time in each other's home, which home would be Cancer. But that Pisces energy connects us. So you might find it fascinating to also learn that Capricorn is the collective earth sign. So Taurus is personal earth, Virgo interpersonal earth, and Capricorn collective earth. So it's about big systems, earth. You know, Capricorn is about the roads that we drive on, the legislation that we all live under the umbrella under. So you have double collective earth, collective water, Capricorn, Pisces, and then personal water, Cancer. And I had shared with you at the retreat, there's some really profound leaders with Capricorn Sun, collective earth, being at the podium, being seen, leadership, with Pisces Moon, that deep well of compassion that unites all of us. And so some of the people, Martin Luther King Jr., Capricorn Sun, Pisces Moon, Michelle Obama, Capricorn Sun, Pisces Moon. And then one of my favorites, Patti Smith, who is a musician, but is also an incredible environmentalist and activist too. Just to name a few. And then I think Elvis is Capricorn, Pisces Moon too. So I had shared that with you at the retreat. Did that click anything into place for you? What was it like for you to receive that? Do you feel yourself connected to these people, maybe like cosmically? Like, can you feel that?
I first of all, I'm such a huge fan of Michelle Obama. And the day I got to meet her in person, I didn't know what else to do. So I did a Buddhist bow, and she just looked at me like, okay, lady. But, that does resonate. But what really resonates is this idea of activists for me, because I was raised in Rochester, New York, which is home to, many famous suffragists and abolitionists. And I can remember even Joseph Smith, the man who started Mormonism. These are people's homes that we would visit in grade school growing up in Rochester. We would go where Harriet Tubman had passed through, all these, Frederick Douglass, all these amazing heroes. And even though I never imagined myself as an activist, I think I grew up believing that those people were heroes. That's what I was taught early on. And that was the way to act in the world with integrity.
Yeah.
And I've always been an empath. And I do feel like sometimes my Pisces and my Capricorn are a little bit at odds. Because I have all this feeling and emotion, and I'm also very, very stoic, which is a strange combination. I think I present differently than I feel. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting to think about Martin Luther King Jr. having that Pisces moon as well. And I'm thinking of his speech, I Have a Dream, which is Pisces, the dream. What I'm hearing from you, though, the connection that you're feeling actually with these people is more of their cardinal energy, which is cardinal earth, which is the activist, cardinal sign activist, which is actually what Capricorn and Cancer share in common, cardinal water, cardinal earth. And when I think of cardinal, I think of like a fist up in the air. Like there's this sense of like standing up for your rights. We also have Aries is a cardinal sign, and Libra, which is the sign of social justice. These are relational signs, the cardinal energies. So cardinal earth, cardinal water, this is connecting us to Capricorn and Cancer, but Cancer we said is personal, whereas Capricorn's collective. And I think you provide such an incredible opportunity for us to see how this would manifest, because yes, you hold a very Capricorn energy, even working like in corporate America, it's very Capricorn, but moms demand action. It's like, that's a very Cancer phrase, actually, moms demand action. So this is kind of transitioning us to your Cancer rising, which I think is the next station that we went to. We went Capricorn Sun retreat, and then we met your Cancer sisters. And I think that they were also sending you love and nurturance and healing and letting you know that it's okay to rest too. I think that was like a continual beat to the rhythm of this experiment with the embodiment. So let's kind of shift to Cancer rising. So you're a mother of 5, and you work with mothers. You've worked with mothers on a very collective scale. How do you balance and navigate being a mom with such a public leadership role? I think that's a good place to start.
When I started Moms Doing Action, I was very naive. I did not realize that immediately I would receive threats of death, sexual violence, and my kids would too. And I'm glad I didn't know that, because I probably would have hesitated. I guess a few things, Jeff, that have been interesting. One is that, my husband and my ex-husband really had to step up, and they both did. I wasn't the one driving kids everywhere. I wasn't the one always attending recitals and sporting events. They were doing that too. That's when my husband started making dinner every night, and still does to this day. And that was, I think, important for my kids. That was beneficial ultimately for them. The other thing is that I thought, and I think a lot of moms think this, that my kids would resent my work with Moms Demand Action because it took up so much of my time. I'd never been busier in my life. I traveled, and yet they never express any resentment. 11 years later, they're so proud of me. And, I think they've taken what they saw me do about something I was passionate about and incorporate that into their own lives. And then I guess the last thing I'd say is, if my kids or husband had ever expressed concern for my safety or their own, I'm not sure I could have kept going, but they didn't. I mean, even when there were times I expressed concern, they were kind of the ones saying to keep going.
Wow. Yeah. Do you know your kids' signs? Have you looked at the astrology of your family?
I do. So my daughters are both Sagittarius. One with Aries rising, one with Taurus rising, and my son is a Libra with a Sagittarius rising.
Okay. So a lot of Sag actually in there.
Yes, a ton.
Yeah, which Sagittarius also is like this kind of fiery, higher vision for the planet too. So it's the collective fire sign. Thank you for your willingness to share about the death threats and like sexual threats and things like that. This is reminding me of, I wanted to look at your chart and also the transits that were happening at the time where you founded this organization. Have you ever looked at that before?
No, I had a conversation once with Heidi a little bit about it. But I not in depth. No. Yeah.
So of course, like my astrology brain was like going there. And so I just want to remind everyone too, that essentially Moms Demand Action was founded the day after the Sandy Hook shooting. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And just as a reminder, there's a little bit of a disclaimer here with violence, but I think it's good for us to just be reminded. Most of us know about the Sandy Hook elementary school shooting. But I just remind people that 26 people were shot and killed on that day. Yep. And this was December 14th, 2012. And so I looked at the transits for that day, and here's your birth chart. I've shared it on the screen here. We see you have Capricorn Sun at 10 degrees, which 10 degrees of Capricorn is January 1st. So you're born right there at the new year. And I always think there's like, that's such a Capricorn day too. Just like, it's aligned with the patriarchal calendar, and it's like New Year's resolutions. But on that day, essentially, here's Moms Demand Action. I put December 15th, 2012. Pluto is in Capricorn, transiting your sun at that time. So again, Pluto entered Capricorn in about 2008, where it's staying in that sign until this year, 2023, when it's shifting into Aquarius, going back into Capricorn. We're kind of in this middle ground. But essentially, Pluto was transiting your sun at that time. And Pluto is the planet of intensity. It's the underworld. It's transformation. It's death. It's rebirth. It's power. For Pluto to transit your sun, this is only a once in a lifetime experience that people have. Some people won't even have that experience because it takes Pluto 248 years to go around the sun. So only people, like a quarter of the wheel, will experience Pluto with their sun. So how profound is it to look back at this time and say, wow, this gives me, this is why astrology is cool, is because it offers you vocabulary to understand the energy you were moving through, even if you weren't aware of astrology at the time. But we can.
So fascinating.
Yeah. So again, this is the last full moon in Capricorn while Pluto's still in Capricorn. So it's actually a time for us to reflect on since 2008 and the deep transformation and underworld journey we've been on. And this full moon is right here with your sun in Capricorn. So it feels like even you just being on this podcast and reflecting on this through astrology is a part of you honoring what the astrology is encouraging. But yeah, so this is an example for all of us to witness Pluto conjunct the sun, which can be a deeply transformative time for people. So does it bring anything up for you to learn that, to see that?
It does. I mean, I will just tell you that I felt invincible, and I had no reason to, right? I was just this lady living in Indiana, and I did not know a single person who helped me start Moms to Me in Action, right? It's almost like we were talking about complete strangers at the retreat. I mean, it was complete strangers from across the country who helped me start Moms to Me in Action using Zoom before it was a thing. And in retrospect, I don't know what made me have the nerve to think that I could take on the most powerful, wealthy special interest that ever existed and win. And it makes me sort of feel tired, like, holy shit, where did all that energy and the fact that I sustained it for a decade, like, where did that come from? I don't have it anymore. Not that I don't care about the issue, not that I don't, I don't think if you asked me to do the same thing right now, I could.
Yeah. And so have you, I guess, from a proverbial place, handed down the baton to someone else? Is that so it's work?
So, I started Moms to Me in Action as a white suburban mom who was afraid her kids weren't safe in their schools, right? Living in a bubble, not realizing that Black and brown people are disproportionately impacted by gun violence, that there's all this daily gun violence, right? Essentially 5 or 6 equivalents of a mass shooting every day. And so I've learned so much, and so have the volunteers, and, we've become very diverse, and we have just organized around things that aren't just school shootings or mass shootings, right? It's looking at the issue holistically. And I'm very grateful to be able to hand the baton to a Black queer woman, a mom of 4 who lives in Washington, D.C., and has looked at and experienced gun violence very differently, right? It feels like a very important cycle.
Yeah. And I'm feeling Pluto transitioning into Aquarius with what you're saying, because Aquarius is about diversity and inclusion. And that's how it evolves off of Capricorn. That's one way we could talk. I could talk about a few other examples too, but that's really profound and powerful to hear the transformations that you've been through with your worldview and with the way that you interact with others in the community. So when we're looking at this chart, we see Sun in Sagittarius. Speaking of Sagittarius, Moms Demand Action was a Sagittarius Sun with a Capricorn Moon. It was in Capricorn that day, conjunct Mars, taking action for the collective Earth, for the systems that we live in. So Sagittarius Sun, Capricorn Moon. Another thing that was happening at that time that I just wanted to check in with, because I have a lot of clients and students who are going through these transits right now, which is often referred to as like the midlife crisis transits, but essentially going through your Saturn opposition. You have Saturn and Taurus in the 11th house, and Saturn was in Scorpio across from your natal Saturn. So Saturn opposition, and then also Uranus opposition. Uranus is the planet of revolution, of bringing communities together. You have Uranus in Libra, revolution through social justice and equality. And it actually squares your Capricorn Sun. So there's a little bit of tension there, but the squares also can build a foundation. So Uranus in Libra across the wheel from Uranus and Aries at that time. So I have people come to me, they're like, what is going on right now? It's the midlife crisis point, Uranus opposition, Saturn opposition. And then for you, it just so happened that Pluto was also conjunct your Sun at that time. So did it feel like, I kind of use the word midlife crisis with quotes around it, because I don't know if that's like the correct way to communicate about it, but it feels like a breaking down point or a breaking through moment in someone's life. So
yeah, so I had been to an astrologer a couple of months before I started Moms to Me in Action. And she said, I see you leading thousands of people. You're not a lawmaker, but you're doing it from your kitchen table, which, became so like such a stunning way to look at it post Moms Demand Action. But I also think that I was in a period where I had just remarried. I was 41. I had been in communications for most of my life. And I can remember I was reading a book by Carolyn Mays about, manifesting and trying to figure out what's next, and really just being open to whatever came my way. And it obviously, this tragedy was not connected to that, but my ability, I think, to jump in and use my skill set to help was.
Yeah. Yeah. A key word for like Pluto with the sun is like alchemy, where it's almost like there's a need to, it's like you have to do something with the energy. And so such a powerful example of that. There's a few other things while we have your chart up that I just wanted to point out that maybe you might get to learn about yourself today. And it's a cool opportunity for us too. I sprinkle in the asteroids into the chart. So have you ever seen the asteroids in your birth chart?
No.
This might offer you some like more clarity, which is a key word for this asteroid around your Pisces moon. So you'll see at the top of your chart, you have a Pisces midheaven, which is the public appearance actually, which is Capricorn sun looks to the midheaven to understand how they are putting themselves out with their higher mission. So you actually, Pisces is your higher mission. Love for all people. Pallas, also Pallas Athene, is a warrior feminine archetype. Pallas is the asteroid that I say pierces through the veil of illusion. She's connected to social justice, to reparations, to equality for all people. So you have a Pisces moon, and it's Pisces moon holding like a sword or a diamond spear that's for justice. I think of Pallas as actually the Statue of Liberty. Is like, if you look at statues of Pallas, it looks similar to the Statue of Liberty. So yes, you have this sensitive spiritual Pisces moon that is also like standing up for social justice. This is why I love putting the asteroids in, because Pisces moon we might talk about is kind of like lost in the sauce. But Pallas is crystal clear clarity, connection to truth. And it's the highest point in your chart is Pallas and the moon together.
That is so interesting. Yeah.
So I'm team asteroids because they're the aspects of the feminine archetype. They're the four aspects. It's four main asteroids. Pallas is the daughter that is born from the father's head, Jupiter's head. So Pallas was never a child. She was born from Jupiter's head as a full-grown woman that came out shouting a victorious cry.
So that is so interesting, because I have never felt like a child. Like I have always felt like an adult.
Which is a very Capricorn thing to say. And I think this Pallas with the moon also speaks to that too. And so this is going to kind of get us into a little bit of your Cancer rising, and how our rising sign is things that we're waking up to within ourselves, and also can represent karmic experiences that we might have. And so I know this might be a little bit more of a personal topic, and Cancer is personal water. So if you feel open to talking about your relationship to your mother, we'd love to hear it. So many of my clients, students, myself included, have had to set really clear boundaries, maybe even no contact boundary with parents and family because of whether it's like mental health reasons or a history of emotional and physical abuse. And it's been a painful part of my journey. In order for me to like step into the role of the person that I'm meant to be in this life, I've had to really set clear boundaries with family. So is there anything you feel open to sharing about your own journey around navigating complex family dynamics? And
you know, it is not lost on me that I run the nation's largest organization of moms, and that I'm a mom of 5, and that I essentially don't have a mom. It's sort of an interesting dichotomy, but my mom comes from a huge amount of trauma on my maternal side. Her mother, so much trauma and poverty. And I can see it getting better each generation. But unfortunately, I think that in order to repair that, I sort of had to step into myself and almost be reparented. This is how I look at it, by my husband, who is unconditionally loving and very mature and wise. And I just did not have that growing up. And so my relationship with my mother was always fraught from the very beginning. I don't think my mom wanted to be a mom. I'm an only child. She had me when she was 21. And she was very attached to her mother. And it was almost as though there was just not room for me. And, they say that people aren't toxic, but relationships are. And we just were never able to sort of undo that, even as I became an adult. And so when I met my husband, I realized that to keep allowing my mother in my life was to damage all of the other parts of the things I was doing, parenting and being a wife, and even probably my mom's demand action work. So I have not spoken to my mom, since I was, 39, and I'm 52 now. So a lot of people hear that and say, oh, that's so sad, or I'm so sorry. And yet I don't have that feeling.
Yeah.
I feel like I've done what's healthy for me. My mom certainly isn't trying to reach out to me either. So I think some relationships are seasonal and some are forever. And that's difficult for people to understand if they have a close relationship with their parents.
Yeah. I'm coming back. Thank you for sharing all of that. It's deeply resonant for me as a practitioner, and I just know it will be for a lot of other people. Where my eye's going to in your chart again is back to Pallas with the moon, because Pallas in Pisces actually is able to stay connected to truth and send universal love. So it's almost like I'm sending you good vibes, Mom, and I'm setting clear boundaries. Pallas knows boundaries. So what we know about your Pisces moon is maybe not knowing boundaries is actually Pallas is saying, actually, no, we do. And it's your ruling planet as a Cancer rising as the moon. So we also look back up here when we talk about Cancer themes.
Yeah. And the only other thing I'd say about that, Jeff, is, I think I felt even as a kid, like I'm in a family that is not right for me. Yeah. I have parents that aren't really into parenting. So I'm going to navigate my own way.
And we're so glad that you did, because it allows you to step into the Capricorn person that you are and the Cancer rising person that you are. And this is a Cancer theme, is intergenerational healing of trauma. Mm-hmm. That is a Cancer theme. And the shadow of Cancer is actually kind of getting pulled in the tidal wave of codependency and repeating abusive patterns. And but Cancer learns to break themselves free from those karmic patternings. And oftentimes it can be actually having to leave the physical space that is home, or leaving the family in order to create their own. So that we're honoring your Cancer rising. So we walked from the Capricorn sun station to the Cancer rising, and then we ended at this Pisces moon station, which is where everyone else in the group who wasn't a Cancer or Capricorn was gathering, and we acted as Pisces. And so it was like this big collective movement where we kind of all surrounded each other. And I think we even looked at each other in the mirror or something like that and got to see each other. And so as we're getting to this Pisces side of yourself, we're talking about clarity with Pallas and their spirituality. And so you did share in your book, you wrote a book, Fight Like a Mother. You wrote that you enrolled in a yoga teacher training course when you were enrolled in a yoga teacher training course when you founded Mom's Demand Action. And you already shared with us that you practice Buddha. I also see that you practice yoga and you meditate regularly as well. So can you maybe talk a little bit about the intersection of spirituality and activism work? What role do you see astrology and spiritual practices playing in social justice movements, if you do at all?
I do. I think it is very important to be connected to the divine, which is also love. I also think that there are guiding principles if the spirituality you're connected to has integrity. I was raised in a different religion that I did not find to be helpful to me. So when I found Buddhism and, the Eightfold Path and the different guiding principles of Buddhism, it taught me a way to be an activist that was without, as much as possible, I'm a human being, but without the shadow of ego, and to have compassion. And also, it is so easy, I think, especially these days with social media, to engage in behaviors that are not productive or that take away your integrity. And so all of those things, whether it's tapping into universal love and compassion and empathy, or just having guiding principles, I think those things come into play. And that's how I see them intertwining with activism.
Yeah. Thank you. Capricorn is often a theme of like looking to role models. So like, for instance, like you as a Capricorn are a role model to me. And are there certain role models that you look to that might be aligned with your values or your integrity? You mentioned you looked up to Michelle Obama earlier, but I'm just wondering if anyone's coming to mind right now, because that's something we might do on a Capricorn full moon, is say, who do I look to that's a role model? That could be a practice we do.
Oh, I love that. Well, I would say someone that I have been obsessed with my entire life is Harriet Tubman. Even when I was in grade school and we had to do projects, all of my projects were about Harriet Tubman. I have artwork of Harriet Tubman everywhere. To me, Harriet Tubman is sort of a soul sister of activism, and just such a fierce warrior. Modern day, someone who is truly a role model to me and someone I've gotten to work shoulder to shoulder with now for over a decade is Lucy McBath. And for anyone who doesn't know Lucy, her son, Jordan Davis, a Black teen, was shot and killed in Florida by a white man who said his music was too loud. Lucy had been a Delta airline attendant for about 30 years. She immediately became a gun violence prevention activist. She became a spokesperson for Moms Demand Action. And it's interesting to think about the fact that her son, Jordan, was killed just weeks before the Sandy Hook school shooting tragedy. And then eventually Lucy ran for office and has now been elected 3 times as a congresswoman from a very conservative place in Georgia, and has won as a Democrat, Newt Gingrich's old seat. And she is a joyful warrior and just someone that I admire, who has suffered such unfathomable grief and pain, and yet uses that to propel her toward protecting other people.
I'm so struck by this phrase that you used to describe her, a joyful warrior. And it's leading me to something else I wanted to check in with you about too, because we had said this Capricorn full moon, it falls on July 3rd, which is actually a degree from your Capricorn sun. We were saying 11 degrees, but it's also the day before what many refer to as the United States birthday, which is the Independence Day, July 4th.
Right.
And I always find the Capricorn full moon always falls somewhere around July 4th. For me, as a member of the LGBTQ community, who's also very aware of the history of the land and the inequalities and injustices that continue to pervade the atmosphere of what it means to be living in the United States, I personally find it quite difficult to celebrate July 4th and Independence Day.
Yep.
Wondering for you, do you and how do you find the joy in national holidays such as July 4th? Would love to hear how you even just keep the joy alive, a joyful warrior, like coming back to that phrase.
I think it is to find the hope. Ultimately, that's what it's about, right? I work with so many people or talk to so many people who say, that they feel hopeless or they feel helpless. And I think cynicism can often be an excuse for inaction, right? If I say I can't make a change or I can't do anything, then I don't have to do anything. Yeah. And it has been my role through Moms Demand Action, shooting tragedy after shooting tragedy, to go on television or talk to reporters and say, no, that is not true. If I, from Indiana, can take on the gun lobby, then we can all, if we do this collectively, use our voices and our votes, we can win. We can affect change. And we've seen that so many times, right? And I think incrementalism is a sort of a dirty word sometimes. as if you don't have overnight wholesale change, then something isn't worth doing. But like, how long did it take for all women, black and white, to get the right to vote? Over 100 years. So progress is something that takes a long time, but that doesn't mean you don't do the work. And I feel the same way you do. You know, I think the people in my generation were sort of sold this bill of goods that America was historically great, as opposed to the promise of America is to be great. And we have not reached that yet, but we can. And I think some of the turmoil that we're experiencing right now is sort of this battle of good versus evil. And I do believe good is winning. I do believe that. But I also think that, there's a saying, hope is a discipline.
Wow.
And that isn't very sexy. It's very pragmatic and practical. I just made up a new word, pragmatical. I really like that, the combination of the two things. But sometimes that feels like hard work, but I think hope is.
Yeah. You have the North Node of Fate at 25 degrees of Aquarius. My sun is in Aquarius at 25 degrees. The United States, if we look at the July 4th, 1776 birth chart, has the moon in Aquarius at 25 degrees. Moon in Aquarius conjunct Pallas in Aquarius in the United States birth chart, which you also have moon Pallas in your chart. It's right here at this North Node. And a key word for Aquarius would be, I hope. It's a sign about collective hope for the future, where all people are treated equally. Around this word hope, what would you hope for Moms Demand Action over the next 20 years while Pluto's in Aquarius?
Well, it needs to last into perpetuity. Even if you look back at Mothers Against Drunk Driving, which was a model for me in creating this organization, they still exist today. Even though they've passed many of the laws that they had in mind, you still have to be vigilant, because there are always these shadow forces that want to take back the wins or pull you backward. So with gun safety, we are in the very nascent stages of wins. We've passed 500 gun laws in the last decade. We've stopped the NRA's agenda 90% of the time in state houses every year for the last decade. We've protected millions of people from unsecure gun storage. There are all these things that are happening, and yet it's still, I think, in the early stages. And so we have to continue to strengthen that foundation so that when we have the right president and the right Congress in place, we can act and then continue to protect those wins. But I also think, and I have the sense, although I don't know yet, but I think part of my next phase of my life is to use what I've learned and to take the wisdom that I have and to empower women to take on more leadership roles and to figure out how to become leaders and to be brave enough to step up. About a quarter of all of the 500,000 elected positions in this country are held by women, just a quarter. And as the saying goes, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're probably on the menu. And I think that's why we see women on the menu over and over again. So that is something else, is just to continue to see the women from Moms Demand Action run for office. We had 140 win in November, everything from school board to city council to state house. I do think when you have more feminine energy representing at all levels, then you just have a better society.
Yes. Which is part of my work bringing the asteroids into the chart. I was saying is more feminine archetypes. And another one, like maybe at some point we can talk and look at your whole chart, but you also have Ceres, which is the mother. Remember we said the 4 asteroids are the 4 feminine archetypes, mother, daughter, sister, wife. Ceres is the mother in the house of the collective, 11th house. Ceres in the 11th house, working with mothers. Ceres processes the grief of the loss of a child. She lost her child Persephone to the underworld, and mythologically it's why we have winter. So Ceres is connected to the cycles of nature and of grief and the loss of innocence and of a child, and it's in the house of the collective in the sign of Aries, the activist, the warrior. So warrior mothers is in your collective house over here too. your whole chart, when people are like really living in alignment with their truth, the whole chart, I'm just like, it like vibrates. So I wanted to just shout out to Ceres and Aries in your 11th house. So yes, it's nice to connect into that hope. And I'm also, the word that's coming to mind is almost like strategic planning. Like you said, like having things set in place so that when the right president is in charge, that we can make certain moves and actions. So something clicked into place for me when you said that. And I think I was reading somewhere where you also are part of another organization that helps to train people, and particularly women, to take positions of office. So what advice would you give to someone who's looking to get more involved in activism or social justice work? Where might be a good place to start?
Yeah, I would say that women have almost a moral calling or obligation right now to figure out how they can serve and lead. And even if you don't see yourself as a leader, you are a leader. If you are leading in your community or your family or your kids' schools or in your religious community, whatever it is, you have skills. I have spent so much time in state houses, and I can just promise you, these men are not rocket scientists, far from it. And if you are caring and compassionate and concerned, you are more than qualified to lead. And look, that can also be, in the business world or wherever. But I think being part of Emerge, which is the organization you mentioned, helps me feel like I am playing my part in encouraging women to do that and then helping them once they do, right? It isn't enough to just make the decision. Then you need this sort of kitchen table and community of people around you who can raise money and give you advice and knock doors. Like, it is a process. And I would suggest anyone who is interested, progressive women, to check out Emerge America, because it does help women, particularly at the local level, run for office. And then at Moms Demand Action, there's a program called Demand a Seat, which really does the same thing.
Boom. I'm feeling just so inspired by what you're sharing. And I can't think of a better way for us to honor the Capricorn full moon. And so for those of you with major Capricorn energy in your chart, this is a call out to you and also to the others with like strong cardinal energy, Capricorn, Cancer, Libra, Aries. We need you more than ever. So I want to close out our time together honoring that you had this. We talked about your time at the retreat and how there was sort of this like mythic story arc. We got to know you during the embodiment. And then by the end, when we had our final night, we had like a little kind of like a talent show, like reflection where everyone got to share something. And what you shared with the group, everyone stood up and cheered. And you shared with us that you had just found out while you were at retreat that you were named one of the 100 most influential people in the world by Time. So I want to say first, congratulations.
Thank you.
I know that this is a year where you were like stepping down from a leadership role, but it also feels like maybe you're even like stepping up into an even more expansive role or title. So what has come of that? And now that it's been a few months since that was named, I'd love to just honor that.
It was such an interesting thing to go back to my room during retreat and learn that. And I think also what I said was like, I was wrestling with this idea of being so powerful, but simultaneously needing to explore the other parts of myself. I have been so busy. I haven't had time to make and keep friends. I have been so busy that I have no longer sort of the brain power to sit down with a book. And I have been so busy for so long that I don't know how to be still anymore. And so I want to relearn those things. And I am, right? I now have made several new friends and we've gone on vacation together, and I am carving out time to relax. And I am experimenting with, you may recall that I really struggled with joyful movement during the retreat. Like that is so incredibly awkward for me. I want to be doing those things, but I also want to explore this idea of taking what I've learned to help teach and to empower. And so, interestingly, I have been asked to write a book about women's leadership. which I'm delving into. I am going to teach a semester at USC starting in January about the book you mentioned, Fight Like a Mother. And so I'm just sort of starting to explore all of these different facets of myself that I feel like I just have been so focused on Moms Demand Action for over a decade that almost time stood still. Like everything's preserved in amber, and now I have to go back and experience other things.
I wanted to just show where in your chart, when you're talking about teaching at a university and also writing a book, where that lives. I mean, Aquarius North Node in the 9th house, North Node of fate has a similar invitation to it as maybe like the rising sign. Like it's something that we're waking up to within ourselves. The 9th house is connected to higher education, universities. It's also connected to publishing and the world at large. And Aquarius is the communicator that's bringing community around a social movement. So it's part of the fate line in your chart to be a teacher of social movement. And you're stepping into that. And again, Pluto's shifting into Aquarius over the next 20 years. So there's more of a focus in the Aquarian parts of our chart. So I look forward to learning more from you. Maybe you'll even be teaching online workshops that I can attend. I don't know. I'd love that idea. Training with you or something. It would be really cool. So yes, congratulations again on being named. Is it 100 most powerful people or influential people? I can't remember.
I think it was influential. And I think strangely, I was an icon next to King Charles.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Your work with Moms Demand Action and also beyond has just been incredibly impactful in raising awareness about gun violence prevention, which is such an important topic right now. And also your willingness to show up in the spiritual space too. It's helping to build bridges between social justice and spirituality, which is so immensely impactful, because I think so many of us in the spiritual community might feel a bit too sensitive to kind of step into these roles that are connected against these big systems like the government. So you give us hope that maybe we can. And I'm passionate about continuing to build bridges, because in some ways, like astrology, I'm very aware is a way for me to kind of compartmentalize the trauma of everything that's happening. But it's also important for us to still be very tapped into what's happening so that we don't just ignore the injustices out of our own need of healing. So thank you. Your presence in this space is just so profound.
No, thank you, Jeff. And I'm so glad that we are friends and that we met at that retreat. And your energy is just so beautiful and you are so knowledgeable. It's astounding. And I'm just grateful you're sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah, you had mentioned that maybe you hadn't made a lot of friends focusing on Moms Demand Action, and you've made a lot of friends that are connecting you to the things that you value. And when you said that, I was like, oh, we're friends. And so you can always count on me. You can check in with me anytime you need some astrological insight or just a friend to lean on. I'm here for you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I can't wait to send everyone to your podcast. It's one of my favorites.
Thank you. I think it's so cool that you listen. I didn't actually.
I love it. Yeah.
Okay, Cosmic Cousins. Thanks as always for tuning into the podcast. How cool was it to connect with Shannon Watts? What a role model, what a leader, one of the 100 most influential people on the planet. It was pretty cool. So Shannon, thank you. Happy Capricorn Full Moon to you and to everyone listening. I want to remind you of a few things, a few extra announcements that I didn't before, but there's a bonus podcast episode available right now. It's titled Weaving with the Cosmos, Honoring the Asteroids with Jeff Hinshaw. It is on Weaving Your Web podcast with Ashley River. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And also Zodiac emoji is back. Do you remember this project from 3 years ago? We have 4 more signs left: Cancer, Leo, Virgo, and Libra. And so I'm excited to announce that Zodiac emoji is back. It's a community project intended to spark both lighthearted and deep conversations around each zodiac sign through the exploration of emojis. So if you want to participate, you could check out the Instagram stories for Cosmic Cousins, where we will be voting and deciding which emoji is most Cancer. Also, if you're into music and songs, I recently released one of the songs that I wrote called Moon Remains on my Instagram. It's considered a, quote, medicine song. That's what a friend of mine called it. So you could check that out there as well. And I think we'll talk about that more for the Cancer new moon in just a few weeks. Thank you as always for being here, cousins. Sending you big love. I hope that this is an empowering Capricorn full moon. And I'll see you next time for the Cancer new moon. Take sweet care, and remember, deep breaths.